memories.
I really like that one thing with the.
Me too, JP. Me too. Sure is, JP. It sure is. Gone are the days of weekly episodes. No more news, current events, and updates on various cast members' chemical dependencies. Zoom meetings? Gone. Timbits in the morning? Gone.
Wait, there were Timbits in the morning?
For those of us who cared to show up on time, there were.
You ate all those donuts in 10 minutes.
It's the only way you'll learn. But more than free donuts and coffee, what I'll take from this experience is fond memories. Memories of working with a group of people. Regular, human people. Some of whom I truly respect.
Horrible. There will be no more patriotism in America. You would have said that will never happen here. Because no matter what happens in America, Democrats and Republicans, they may disagree on issues. But what brings them together is our patriotism and love of country. Oh, no, 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 no. That's no longer there. So when I say my past is America's future, came a country, I was born and raised in a country that used to be Paris of the Middle East, Lebanon, the banking capital of the Middle East. Today, Lebanon is like Venezuela. People are fighting each other and killing each other in the grocery store over a gallon of milk, over a loaf of bread. Thank God we're not to that point in this country yet, even though we've got baby formula disappearing from the shelf. You know that the shortage of baby formula, female hygiene products disappearing. I mean, who would have thought in America, parents, moms, fathers are going to be running from grocery store to grocery store, drugstore to drugstore, looking for one can of baby formula to feed their children in America, not Cuba, not China, not Venezuela, but the United States of America in the 21st century. That's where we are. And that's why I am so passionate about speaking up in defense of our country and so passionate about mobilizing and empowering Americans to start speaking out, develop a backbone. Do not be discouraged by the labels. They can call you racist, bigot, homophobe, xenophobe, Islamophobe, whatever label they want to slap at you, let them slap it. Because when they cannot argue with your facts, all they have to do to silence you is to slap a label on you. Don't let them succeed in silencing you. You speak up. We have the truth on our side. We have everything on our side, the Constitution, our Bill of Rights. We have the power that our founding fathers gave to us to preserve this most incredible nation on the face of the planet. Let's exercise it. And if my message resonates with people, go to our website, actforamerica.org, and join us. Actforamerica.org. Click on Get Involved. Sign up our Act Now campaigns. We named the organization Act for America. Not think about America, not wish for America, not pray for America. You can do all that and you should, but without taking action, nothing happens. Go to actforamerica.org and get involved.
Yeah, we're at a pivotal point. You hear this all the time though, and I think maybe that's why it's not resonating with people. They're like, oh, it's the most important election. It is this is the state that leads the way, blah blah blah. Because I think people have overused, even on our side, and which I'm not sure. Our side is what, right? All I know is I'm conservative. I love this country. Label me however you want. Yes, I vote Republican because they are the closest to what I believe in, but I don't support many of them because they're not conservative enough. They're not loving this country enough. And before we segue into that, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock for you, don't worry. So my point is that I think people have just been. It's almost like our own side is setting the narrative against us, where they've said this is so important, but yet this time it really is, because you just brought up all of the now attitudes of people that are really loving socialism, and we're seeing direct results of that with supply chain issues and the bills that are being passed and the freedoms that are literally being taken away, and more that you will see. And we're almost at the point where we've crossed the line where there's no coming back. And you reference people in the grocery stores in other countries. That's going to be happening here because you already have what they say 2 million people. I guarantee.
Democrats go. Therefore ballots stole when late at night they rigged the polls. In battleground states, the lioness holes, they tip the scales for joy. Soon may the gentleman come to look back his son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrat. Da 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 da. has gone sky high. They're ripping with the food supply. The southern border's open wide. Let's go, Brandon, go. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up at his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go. Well, runaway inflation soars, he's bleeding, funding wars. He's lost his mind, he cracked his drawers. Oh, blow, Joey Biden, you blow. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up and his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up and his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go.
Club fighting with the suspect, potentially saving lives. The suspect is in custody today and has been identified as 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich. Police have not yet discussed a motive. In a statement on social media, Club Q said they were devastated by the senseless attack on the LGBTQ community. Be sure to stay with Newsnet as we continue to bring you the latest on this developing story. Hitting and killing a girl participating in the event. The driver who lost control of the vehicle and struck a child is now arrested and charged with reckless driving along with other offenses. Police have identified him as Landon Glass, and witnesses say moments before the crash, they heard him screaming that he had lost control and couldn't stop the truck.
Drivers, you can see the people in the truck getting out, like telling people, warning people, get out of the way, we can't stop, we can't stop. They were screaming. The cops were saying, get out of the way, they can't stop. I definitely don't think this was like purposeful.
We're continuing to follow a historic snowstorm now in New York, where the Buffalo area saw even more snowfall last night, adding to a deadly and record-setting storm. Officials say at least 2 people in the Buffalo area have died after suffering cardiac complications while trying to shovel snow. In some places, they've recorded over 6 feet of snow. Whiteout conditions started Thursday and have piled on throughout the weekend. On Saturday, Buffalo shattered a daily snowfall record as residents struggled to clear paths. New York Governor Kathy Hochul declared a state of emergency across 11 counties in western New York.
I also want to announce that I will be, as of today, signing a request for a federal emergency declaration. This is important for us to be able to receive reimbursements for the expenses of this storm. We've been in contact with FEMA, and we feel hopeful, optimistic that this will be granted.
The city of Buffalo has also shut down mass transit and banned travel on most roads. Forecasts say the heavy snow will wind down today, but more is possible later this week. Stay with the news now.
We specifically have a Chinese fentanyl problem now that they're fashioning it, especially in ways of delivery to make it appealing to younger youths and even children, i.e. they're doing gummy bears and whatnot. And so what he identified was, we're going to take on China. For me, taking on the fentanyl trade and sealing the border was a massive part of last night's announcement. Related to that, he also, of course, identified the illegal immigration and the crime that sort of goes hand in hand with having an open border and not knowing who's coming in, and talking about things like how we have dozens of identified foreign terrorists have snuck in through the border and we don't know where they are currently. That, to me, is a national security crisis. So he identified these things. He talked heavily about the economy and inflation, which is affecting literally every American. And he talked about ways to achieve results he had during his first presidency. And I think that's what resonated with America last night, and especially for me, when you're talking about it was a different tone. It was very even keel, and he was speaking about how he would solve America's problems. And if you're going to run for president of the United States, you have to not just identify them, but present actual solutions. And he offered a bunch last night.
Democrats go. For ballots stolen when late at night they rig the polls. In battleground states, the lioness holes, they tip the scales for Joe. Soon may the chairman come to look back his son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrat. Da 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 da. The cost of fuel has gone sky high. They're ripping with the food supply. The southern borders open wide, let's go, Brandon, go. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up at his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go. Well, runaway inflation soars, he's bleeding, funding wars. He's lost his mind, he cracked his drawers. Oh, blow, Joey Biden, you blow. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up and his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up and his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go.
A period. The world was at peace, America was prospering, and our country was on track for an amazing future because I made big promises to the American people, and unlike other presidents, I kept my promises. I kept them. Thank you very much. Under our leadership, we were a great and glorious nation, something you haven't heard for quite a long period of time. We were a strong nation, and importantly, we were a free nation. But now we are a nation in decline. We are a failing nation. For millions of Americans, the past 2 years under Joe Biden have been a time of pain, hardship, anxiety, and despair. As we speak, inflation is the highest in over 50 years. Gas prices have reached the highest levels in history and expect them to go much higher now that the Strategic National Reserves, which I filled up, have been virtually drained in order to keep gasoline prices lower just prior to the election. Joe Biden has intentionally surrendered our energy independence. There is no longer even a thought of dominance. And we are now begging for energy help from foreign nations, many of whom find us detestable. Our southern border has been erased, and our country is being invaded by millions and millions of unknown people, many of whom are entering for a very bad and sinister reason. And you know what that reason is. We will be paying a big price for this invasion into our country for years to come.
Despite the Chinese Communist Party threat, would you believe that China and the United States have just resumed climate talks? I can hear you at home saying, yes, I do believe it, unfortunately. The CCP is a murderous regime carrying out genocide against its own people. Do you think it really cares about the climate? It's building new coal plants like they're going out of fashion. China, though, stands to gain a lot by the U.S. shackling itself with climate policies. Just recently, the U.S. made it cheaper to import solar panels from China. So much for bringing manufacturing home. The CCP is hoodwinking the United States in its talks. Very simple. It will only end bad for America, but this trend is everywhere, even within America too. ESG, environmental, social, and governance policies. I'm sure you've heard about it. And joining us now to discuss this is Justin Danhoff, Head of Corporate Governance at Strive Asset Management. Justin, it's great to see you again. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, it's nice to talk with you, Paul.
Justin, what do you think about what we're seeing here with more cooperation between the U.S. and China on the climate?
I mean, we are getting played for the sucker that we deserve to be, frankly. When it comes to the issue of ESG, you're right to note that many American businesses have had shackles of ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance restraints put around their ankles, while the CCP laughs at us, as you rightly pointed out, continues to build coal-fired power plants one after the other, while U.S. consumers continue to suffer both the results of the regulatory state, but also the asset management class in the United States of America that is really one of the driving forces behind this push for ESG at American businesses.
So in the United States, Justin, there seems to have been a backlash against ESG, particularly among conservatives. Has it had an impact with the powers that be, for want of a better phrase?
It's interesting because if you look at the powers that be, right, BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard that can collectively control about $20 trillion in assets under management, they have made a push to give the shareholder vote back to the actual owners of capital. And we think that that's an important step in recognizing that they've gotten too far out over their skis. But they can't walk their commitments on ESG all the way back because they've made commitments to states like California and New York and Norges Bank, whereby they have to live up to certain ESG commitments. And look, they still go speak at the Clinton Global Initiative, the World Economic Forum, and they are doing the bidding of the Davos crowd here in the United States of America. And it's quite interesting to note, too, that as the G20 is going on and Xi and President Biden are talking, who else has a big, big microphone there? None other than Klaus Schwab, the leader of the World Economic Forum. I'm sorry, but the World Economic Forum is not a G20 country. Why does he have a megaphone there to direct action specifically on ESG, climate in particular? It's an interesting question that deserves a better answer.
I think so, Justin. Can you explain that? Because I think for a long time, you talk about World Economic Forum. New York Times had an article, conspiracy theorists talk about World Economic Forum as nothing. Whereas at the same time, they say this stuff on their website. He's at the G20 speaking to the leaders. Can you enlighten us a little bit of what exactly is going on here?
Yeah, sure. So you're absolutely right that the mainstream media, they gaslit the American public on this issue all along, the power that the World Economic Forum holds, especially over nations that are poorer countries that are trying to increase their energy output, right? The World Economic Forum is saying, yeah, we'll give you loans. The World Bank, the same thing, will give you loans, but conditioned on the fact that you use clean energy or alternative energy in your energy loads, which is, of course, not how developing nations are actually going to deliver to their citizens. So it's really sad to see. And again, what is the World Economic Forum saying?
President's family. The press secretary added that the White House is handling these threats by the GOP. But even upon being pressed, the White House press secretary would not comment on the legitimacy of those allegations of Biden's involvement in Hunter's business dealings. Instead, she went on to criticize Republicans.
Merits of any of these allegations?
I've been very clear.
Them, but not on
I've been very clear. It's like, Republicans said that they were going to, during the midterms, they were going to fight inflation, right?
Meanwhile, Congressman Jim Comer, the House Republican spearheading the investigation into the Biden family, told CNN that while he's prepared to subpoena Hunter Biden, he's not planning to issue one to President Joe Biden. Comer explained that trying to compel testimony from a sitting president is complicated, while noting the Republicans will take a different approach instead of sending out subpoenas like junk mail. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
To 2021.
Well, Congressman, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I have to be very careful about what I can say about when.
Even now, because that's what you told us 2 years ago.
May I finish? About when we do and do not, and where we have and have not used confidential human sources. But to the extent that there's a suggestion, for example, that the FBI's confidential human sources or FBI employees in some way instigated or orchestrated January 6th, that's categorically false.
Did you have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol on January the 6th prior to the doors being open?
Again, I have to be very careful.
It should be a no. Can you not tell the American people no? We did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol.
Gentleman's time has expired. You should not read anything into my decision not to share information.
Director Ray,
confidential
gentleman's time has expired.
If they so chose, or to control software on millions of devices, which gives an opportunity to potentially technically compromise personal devices.
One congresswoman asked Ray if the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, was using ByteDance or TikTok to surveil American citizens. Her question referenced a Forbes report from last month that said TikTok employees in China were plotting to surveil the location and personal information of specific Americans. Ray didn't answer her question directly. Instead, he said it'd be better to discuss what's actually happening in a closed, classified setting. We reached out to TikTok.
Democrats go. Therefore, ballots stole when late at night they rigged the polls. In battleground states, the lioness holes, they tip the scales for Joe. Soon may the chairman come to look back his son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrat. What? Da 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 da. The cost of fuel has gone sky high. They're ripping with the food supply. The southern border's open wide. Let's go, Brandon, go. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up at his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go. Well, runaway inflation soars, he's bleeding, funding wars. He's lost his mind, he cracked his drawers. Oh, blow, Joey Biden, you blow. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up and his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go. Soon may the chairman come to lock him up and his cracked son. One day when justice is done, we'll see the Democrats go.